are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here. On this Thursday, July 18th, we have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So let's get into what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the NFC West. We're going to do quarterback rankings within that division. So this will be the last NFC division that we do quarterbacks for. We covered the previous three. We'll start the AFC tomorrow. We'll do the AFC East. Then in the second part of the show, we will talk about Caleb Williams signing his rookie deal. There was an interesting note with that I wanted to get into regarding him wanting to exclude the franchise tag in his deal, but that didn't happen. So I wanted to get into that a little bit, but as my dog starts to bark. So that's the second part of the show. Third part of the show, we'll talk more about Brandon Aiyuk requesting a trade from the 49ers. I'll talk about some other players where in the past they requested a trade, but they still ended up getting a new contract. So I just wanted to get into that. So that'll be the third part of the show. We'll talk about Bill Belichick again, his desire to coach in 2025. So we'll get into that. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about Josh Jacobs and some comments that he made about the Raiders as an organization. So that's the rundown for the show. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing the NFC West. So, interesting division, of course. You got the 49ers, the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals. You already know that. But, so these are the rankings. So so we're starting at number 4, working our way. So at number 4, we got Geno Smith. You guys already know what teams were in the division, but, it was buying me some time to, get the rankings up. But, so at number 4, I have Geno Smith. Geno Smith has been a great story. He kind of bounced around after, the Jets drafted him. And, he was with the Seahawks when Russell Wilson was still there. He filled in for Russ when Russ got hurt his last season in Seattle. And then that first full year without Russ, he was pretty good. And he ended up winning Comeback Player of the Year. And it's been a great story. Last year, missed some games. Wasn't as good as the previous season, but the Seahawks, they still were in a position where, maybe they could have made the playoffs, but, fell a little bit short. But, in 2022, he had 4,282 passing yards, 30 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Last year, 3,624 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So, down from the previous season. But, it's been quite a story, and I don't really know what the future holds for Geno Smith. I've kind of said in the past that I think, with the acquisition of Sam Howell, I feel like at some point maybe he could end up being the starter over Geno Smith, but I could be completely wrong on that. But, I think Geno still, deserves to have a leg up on Howell, and, he should still be the starter. So, we'll see how that unfolds, and we'll see what Seattle's like this year, especially because they got a new coach, Mike McDonald. came over from the Ravens. There's no more Pete Carroll, which is very strange, but that's just how it is. And Geno Smith has a great supporting cast around him. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba going into his second season, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. It's a great supporting cast. And, I don't think it's a tough division to be in. And I think, what did I have Seattle at? I think I had them at like 7 wins when I did my schedule predictions. I think that's fair, but, they could surprise us. So, but I have them at 4. It's possible, like I said, maybe, Sam Howell takes over at some point. I like the other quarterbacks in the division better. That's the other thing, too. So, I got Geno Smith at 4. So, moving on to Kyler Murray. So, I have him at 3. Now, Kyler didn't play that much last year, came back towards the end of the season. And, you know what, at times he did play well. I thought he played well. I think he's an explosive player, especially taking off with the football and running with it. I expect him to. I think he'll put up decent numbers this season. Doesn't have the best supporting cast around him. I mean, they added a number 1 receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. through the draft. You still got James Conner, Trey McBride, the young tight end. He looks like he's going to become one of the best tight ends in the NFL. So, not the best supporting cast around him, but I think another year removed from the ACL tear, I think he can put up good numbers. The Cardinals, I don't think are going to be a very good team this year, but we'll see what happens. I mean, the offense, again, full season of Kyler, I think that's, something to look forward to. Maybe they win a couple more games than they did last year. And they were even competitive without Kyler. I mean, they won with Josh Dobbs at quarterback against the Cowboys early on in the season. So, Jonathan Gannon has this team, I think, heading in the right direction. So, I mean, he had that team playing hard last year. So, I think Kyler, like I said, a full season back, another year removed from the injury, I think he could put up good numbers. And, we'll see. So, I have him at number 3. Then at 2, I got Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford had a bounce-back season last year. Not a lot of people had high expectations for the Rams going into the season. Really, I don't think really anybody knew what to expect from the Rams, especially with how the previous year went, where Stafford got hurt, Cooper Kupp got hurt, Aaron Donald got hurt. The Rams were not a good team in 2022. I mean, even before they got hurt, they were struggling, but they bounced back. I mean, I think we kind of got put on notice a little bit in that Week 1 matchup against the Seahawks when, Puka Nacua had a really good game and the Rams won that game. A lot of people had, Seattle winning that. Got Cooper Kupp back and, still kind of working his way back because he started the year injured. But, Stafford played really well last year. And, he's, what was he? I think he was like top 5, top 6 in the that top quarterbacks list. Matthew Stafford still got some good football left in him. And I think the Rams, they could definitely be a playoff team. Last year, Stafford had 24 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, just under 4,000 yards. He had 3,965 passing yards. His first season with the Rams was unbelievable. I mean, he had 41 touchdowns. I mean, the interceptions were high, 17 interceptions, but he had 41 touchdowns his first season with the Rams, and almost 5,000 yards. He had 4,886 yards. And then in 2022, of course, got hurt. He had 2,087 passing yards, 10 touchdowns to 8 picks. But, now you're hoping Cooper Kupp comes into the season fully healthy. You got Puka Nacua again to try to replicate what he did last year. Kyron Williams as well. I mean, he was a force coming out of the backfield last year. And because he got hurt in the beginning of the year, and once he came back from injury, that kind of changed their season. And, they went on a run and ended up making the playoffs. So, you got to give Matthew Stafford that respect, of course. I think, obviously Stafford is kind of on the back nine. Whereas Kyler Murray, he's still got some more time, some more runway with his career. But for the moment, though, I think where both teams are at, I put Stafford at 2. I think the Rams are gonna, like I said, I think they should make the playoffs once again. Despite on defense you got Aaron Donald retiring, and that's going to be a huge impact. So we'll see how that defense responds without him, but I think Stafford should be at 2. I think he's going to have a good year. And then at number 1, I mean, it's kind of no surprise. And look, I think overall, maybe probably you would say Matthew Stafford's a better quarterback than Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy, I got to put at 1. I think he's going to have the best season out of these guys. Now, what concerns me, though, is the Brandon Aiyuk stuff, which we will talk about a little later in the show. But, I touched upon it yesterday, of course, but kind of taking a different perspective on things. But, if that Brandon Aiyuk stuff doesn't get resolved and he ends up leaving, I mean, that's going to hurt this offense, and that's going to hurt Brock Purdy. But, Brock Purdy, since he's come into the league, he's played really well. And, regardless if you think he's a system quarterback or not, he's put up good numbers. And I think he's taken this 49ers offense to places that, the previous quarterbacks didn't. And again, you could say, well, they also got Christian McCaffrey as well. That definitely has helped, and I'm not going to argue with that because, he's the best running back in the league. But Brock Purdy has taken full advantage of his opportunity. And, if he continues down this path, he's going to get a big contract. And the 49ers love him. I know I did a segment on George Kittle talking about Brock Purdy and how he looks great. So, let's see what kind of season he puts up this year. And, if they don't have Brandon Aiyuk, I mean, that's going to be a test for him. Because, you have people that criticize him, because he's got his Avengers supporting cast, and we saw last year when there was no Deebo Samuel or Trent Williams, they struggled. So, last year, 4,280 yards passing, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And he was an MVP candidate. And he helped guide his team to a Super Bowl. Again, you look at what happened in the NFC Championship game. They were down by 17 points. I mean, they could have easily folded, but they didn't. And they came back. I know there was, luck was kind of on their side at times, but you know what? Got to give them credit. They came back, and I thought Brock Purdy played well enough that they could have won the Super Bowl. I definitely think so, but it just didn't happen. So, but yeah, I think out of these guys, I think he's going to have the best year, and he's got the best supporting cast out of anybody in the division. And I think, like I said, I think Kyler's is probably the worst supporting cast out of these teams. I don't think it's I think, like I said, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., you got James Conner, Trey McBride. Like there's pieces there, but I think if you were to look at Seattle, the Rams, and the 49ers, I mean, they're better supporting cast than the Cardinals. So, but yeah, I think Brock Purdy once again gonna have a really good year. So I got him at 1. So just to kind of reiterate again, so Geno Smith 4, Kyler Murray 3, Matthew Stafford 2, Brock Purdy 1. Let me know what you guys think about those rankings. How would you have the rankings in this division? So tomorrow we'll do the AFC East, which is going to be tough, but we're going to do it. So we're going to take our first break now. When we come back, we're going to talk about Caleb Williams. We'll talk about him signing his rookie deal, and a couple other things I wanted to touch upon with that as well. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing should share the stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about, well, a pair of Chicago Bear rookies, signing their rookie contracts. So yeah, you got Caleb Williams, of course, and Odunze, the rookie wide receiver. So they both signed their deals by training camp on Tuesday, and Caleb Williams signed his contract yesterday. There was some news that like he still hadn't signed his contract yet. And actually, there's a pair of rookies in Minnesota that haven't signed their contracts either. J.J. McCarthy hasn't signed his, and Dallas Turner, who they drafted, the pass rusher, he hasn't signed either. They're the only remaining unsigned first-round picks, which is interesting. Now, there's rumors that J.J. McCarthy hasn't signed his deal because he was waiting for Caleb Williams to sign his. I don't know. For me, I just find it odd that it takes this long for, rookies to sign their contracts. I don't know. Maybe it's just because, like, you're getting drafted to a team, so you're already there. I don't know. It's just kind of weird how that happens. But the interesting thing about Caleb Williams is he requested that the Bears exclude the franchise tag in his contract, and of course the Bears declined, which I thought was interesting because I don't think I've ever heard a rookie try to do that. I mean, look, we've seen things happen where, like, think back to Eli Manning and, not wanting to play in San Diego, and he ends up going to the Giants, and Phillip Rivers goes to the Chargers, and, but I don't know. That's different, but I don't know. It's just weird things that transpire, with rookies. But yeah, this is, I don't think I've ever seen anyone request this before. But of course it got declined. Because, it eventually, well, if Caleb Williams is the guy, he's going to get that big contract. But, if he's not the guy, well, he's not going to have to worry about the franchise tag because, then the Bears are going to move off of him. But now that's down the line. But yeah, I've never heard of a rookie, unless maybe it has happened. Maybe you got to do a deep dive and look. But yeah, I haven't heard of that before. But that does kind of open up the discussion about the franchise tag. How do we feel about it? Because, if you're a player and you want to, like, go out and test free agency, well, you might get franchise tagged and you don't have the opportunity to do that. And you're kind of, locked in with your team. I mean, now, you've had players that they get franchise tagged, but, they end up going elsewhere. Like we saw L'Jarius Sneed went to the Titans, even though the Chiefs franchise tagged him. T. Higgins got franchise tagged. And he's going to play under that this year, but who knows what's going to happen beyond that. But, yeah, the franchise tag, I mean, unless it's like, you're a fan and you're like, well, we got to franchise tag our guy so we make sure he doesn't leave. Like when, being a Yankee fan, when Aaron Judge was a free agent, I was like, if only we had the franchise tag just so we can make sure that he stays, 100%, he's going to stay a Yankee. Now, I knew all along he was going to stay a Yankee. I mean, I was kind of nervous, but I still had confidence in that. It ended up happening. But, he went out and tested free agency. So, yeah, I just think it's interesting, that he didn't want to include that. But what team is ever going to agree to that? They want to make sure that if you're the guy, they don't want you testing free agency. Unless you're Saquon Barkley, of course, because they franchise tagged him and then they had him test free agency and, he left. Yeah, so that was interesting. So the contract for Caleb Williams was a 4-year, fully guaranteed contract worth $39 million. Includes a $25.5 million signing bonus. So that is a big contract. I don't have Odunze's contract, but while I look for that, if there is the specifics to Rome Odunze's contract, do have some comments in the chat from Rick Diaz. He's got a handful of comments here, so that'll keep me busy a little bit while I look for Odunze's contract. He said the 49ers are a good team and nobody knows if they're going to have a good season. Every team has a lot of rookies. It's going to be a challenge. I think he had similar comments yesterday, if I believe. I mean, we kind of know that the 49ers, with their talent, that they are going to be a very good team. So, yeah. And then also said there's rookies for the NFL teams. They do play good the whole season and some don't. Well, yeah. You know, I mean, it's like the guys we're talking about right now. I mean, Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze are both super talented. But, you know, we got to see how they actually play at an NFL level. And then you also said, do you think there's going to be some surprises in the NFL? What team is playing good? What do you think? I mean, there's definitely going to be some surprises. I mean, there always is. I mean, I said the Chargers, I feel like could be a sneaky good team this year with Harbaugh, you know, now in the fold. You got Justin Herbert. You know, I'm not saying that they're going to, you know, win a ton of games. I mean, maybe they're like a 9-8 team this year, but, you know, I think that could be a surprise. Maybe a team in the AFC South. I know the Colts have been trending. I know Kay Adams is high on them. I was listening to an ESPN commercial, and Chris Canty was talking about the Colts as well. But I mean, the Colts were 9-8 last year. Yeah, I don't really know. I know there's people that are high on the Commanders, and you know, I wasn't very high on the Commanders, but you know, if they come out and play really well, if Jaden Daniels plays well, you know, maybe they surprise us. But my concern with them is like their defense. You know, because if Jaden Daniels is the guy, you know, I think the Commanders maybe could put up some points because they do have, you know, they got some decent players on their offense. You know, Terry McLaurin. I mean, Terry McLaurin's just looking for, you know, the right quarterback. And then he also says, I agree with you. The Chargers will be a good team, but we cannot count out the Jets. Listen, I'm high on the Jets. You know, if you've listened to me talk on this show a lot, you will know that, you know, I'm high on the Jets this year. I'm going towards that storm. I know there's a lot of people that are standoffish when it comes to the Jets, but you know, I think they have the roster. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, I think the Jets are going to be. I think the Jets are going to be really good. Houston's going to be good. Although I was having a conversation with one of my friends last night. He thinks that the Texans could have a down year, that they could a regression year, because he talked about Diggs and the kind of locker room presence that he has. He talked about how, you know, we don't know how Tank Dell is going to, you know, rebound from his injuries. You know, he said Stroud could regress. So that's an interesting take, because I've just been like, yeah, Texans are going to be great. But I have said that, you know, we don't, you know, how is Stephon Diggs going to be in that locker room when, you know, Stroud is spreading the ball around? He's not going to get, you know, all the targets. He also said, what about the Denver Broncos? Not very high on the Broncos this year. I think they're going to have a down year. All right, so I did find Odunze's contract. So it's a 40-year, $22.7 million fully guaranteed, and a 13.3 signing bonus. So those are his contract details. So yeah, but they got these guys signed, and like I said, you got a pair of Vikings. You know, they're now they got to get signed, which they will at some point. But also the other interesting thing too is, so Caleb Williams doesn't have his own agent. He's got, you know, he's got lawyers and he's got groups of people that, you know, help him out through this process, because he did say that, you know, with the contract he's not handling it, but he doesn't have an agent. So I thought that was interesting. I wasn't aware of that. So I thought that was an interesting thing as well. But yeah, so they got them signed. They're good to go. And yeah, I really am looking forward to watching this Bears team this year and seeing what they can do. Because, you know, I see on social media, you know, people think the Bears are still going to be bad. But I don't know. For me right now, it's like it's hard for me to think that they are going to be a bad team. Like I said, I think they'll have their early season struggles, but I think they will finish with a respectable record. I think there's too much talent on this team. The defense played better towards the end of the year. You know, I think with the additions of Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift to this offense to go along with what they already had, you know, I think the Bears can be a decent team and maybe compete for a playoff spot. Now, I know in our production meeting, one of our hosts was concerned about the offensive line for the Bears. And, yeah, if you got a ton of weapons, listen, you know, it's not going to matter if you can't get them the ball because you're constantly being rushed. So, but I think the Bears are going to be, I think the Bears are going to be a decent team. I think they'll, like I said, I think they'll end up with a respectable record, but only time will tell. You know, it's a big year for Matt Eberflus. You know, because I'm not very, you know, high on him as a head coach. I don't know. We haven't really seen that much from him, so I don't know. Also in the chat, Rick Diaz also said, "Do you think the Atlanta Falcons are improved this year?" I do. I think they are. We can't count out. Yeah, of course we can't count out the Lions. I mean, you know, can't count out kneecaps. You know, because that's what I like to call Dan Campbell. Can't count them out. They're going to be one of the top teams in the NFC, one of the top teams in the NFL, really. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on the Bears. Rome Odunze, I know we kind of, you know, Rick sending us a lot of comments in the chat, which I appreciate. So, but let me know what you guys think about the Bears signing Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze getting their rookie deals done. How many touchdown connections do you think they'll have this year? So, before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So, when we come back from our second break of the show, we're going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk once again. Just some things I wanted to touch upon, you know, with the fact that he did request a trade. You know, the 49ers, they don't want to trade him. But I also wanted to get into some other players that have requested a trade in the past and what ended up happening with those players. So, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk more about the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk. One of them are more popular topics here on this show. So I know the news broke that Brandon Aiyuk, requested a trade from the Niners. And, I don't really have confidence that, they're going to be able to. Well, I lean more towards he's going to be gone as opposed to he's going to be staying. However, the 49ers have dealt with similar situations like this in the past. So, Deebo Samuel requested a trade back in April of 2022. And he was, in fact, not traded, and he ended up getting a 3-year deal, $71.5 million, in late July of that year. And Deebo Samuel, of course, is a very important player to this offense as well. And another player, too, now plays a completely different position, and that's kicker, and that's Robbie Gould. Back in 2019, he requested a trade, but he wasn't traded. Instead, he got a 4-year extension in July of 2019. So the 49ers have dealt with this before. And Adam Schefter said, because I was listening to, a segment of him talking, and he said, the 49ers, they don't want to trade him. So, I don't know how this is going to play out. This is just going to continue. And who knows when, if anything's going to happen. But if they could get a deal done with Aiyuk, that would be huge. So we'll see what happens. But, you had other players as well. T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, they've, talked about, playing elsewhere, and that's still very likely. But, they're still Bengals. T. Higgins is going to play under the franchise tag. Yeah, Lamar Jackson, if you remember. That was a big deal. He requested a trade from the Ravens, and he had teams, interested. That ended up not happening. He got his 5-year, $260 million deal. Kenny Pickett requested a trade after, Russell Wilson signed, and he got traded to the Eagles. These are ones that actually, ended up going through. So Elijah Moore, Kenny Pickett, they requested trades. Elijah Moore requested a trade from the Jets, and he ended up going to the Browns. So, but that's just other teams. The 49ers, they have kept their players. So that should give at least, fans of the team, just a little bit of hope that he's going to stay. He's going to end up staying. Everything's going to be fine. And we go from there. But the problem is, again, long term, you got all these players that are making a lot of money. You're going to have to cut ties at some point because you're not going to be able to keep everybody. But I don't know. This has just been... It's honestly irritating, this situation. I don't lose sleep over it. It's, it's not like it bugs me 24/7, but it's just when I have to come on and, you got to think about, things to talk about because, we're still in the off season here. And again, it's more Aiyuk stuff and just, it's in posting stuff on social media. And it's just, can we get to a resolution here? And I know I said this already, but I'm going to say it again. Let's figure this out. Are you going to stay or are you going to end up going somewhere else? Now, I think he should not hold out if it impacts the regular season for an extended period of time. I think anybody that holds out for an extended period of time and it takes a big chunk out of the regular season, you're only hurting yourself. Because you're going to end up like Le'Veon Bell. I'm against holding out for an extended period of time if it impacts the regular season. Now, you could look at, I think about it now, Calvin Ridley basically missed 2 years and, comes back and he had over 1,000 yards. So, you could also make the argument that, hey, look, he missed an extended period of time. It didn't matter. I still went out and had over 1,000 yards. But I don't know. I just think you're only hurting yourself by holding out. Especially, like, during the regular season. Because I just don't think that does you any favors, in my opinion. I don't know. That's just me. But, yeah, Ridley had, 1,016 receiving yards. So he literally just got over the 1,000-yard mark. But, I don't know. That's just my opinion. You could say I'm wrong, but... Yeah, it's just, we just got to continue to play that waiting game. I don't know how many times I got to say it. It's just, like I said, it's irritating because we want to get to, a point where they agree on something or they have to move him. But, there's some teams, they said the Commanders, I saw the Commanders are favorites, Steelers, maybe. So there are teams that definitely will try to, jump in and try to get him. I don't know where my friend saw this, but he said that, well, I did see that the Raiders could be a team. My friend said that they could do that potentially there could be like a Aiyuk for Devontae Adams swap, which that would be a very weird trade, but I don't see that happening. Listen, if the 49ers got Devontae Adams, that would be, I think Devontae Adams is a better receiver than Brandon Aiyuk. So, but you're taking on a big contract. But he's another guy that could be traded. You know, there's people talking about him going to the Jets. So, yeah, like I said, just got to keep playing the waiting game. And at some point, we're going to get to a resolution, but it doesn't look like it's happening. But I think it's encouraging to know that the 49ers have had things like this happen in the past, and they've been able to agree, come to an agreement with their players, like Deebo, and like I said, Robbie Gould. But at some point it's going to be a problem because Brock Purdy's going to be wanting a new deal, and the 49ers are going to have some tough choices to make. So that's something that could definitely throw a wrench into things, and they might have to cut ties with some people. But like I said, only time will tell, and that's we just got to keep playing the waiting game. So, but I'm hoping that he stays because I think that the 49ers are a team that can win a championship, and I feel like there's not that many teams that could say that. They've been a team that for years they've been really close, but they fall short. And I don't know, if you go to the Commanders, I mean, it's going to take some time to kind of build this team up. I mean, if he goes to the Commanders, that definitely helps them out a ton. That helps Terry McLaurin out. I mean, you go to the Steelers, that helps out George Pickens, and helps the quarterback situations there. Gives him another weapon. But it's just, I feel like the 49ers, if you want, but what is he wants to get paid. But, if you go to a team that's, not in a position to, to win, I mean, maybe they get there eventually, but, the 49ers are ready to win right now. The Steelers, they could be a playoff team, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl team. Unless Russell Wilson plays like how he did in Seattle. The 49ers are in a prime position. They've got to break through. And can they do that finally? It's tough. And, who knows if they get home field advantage this year? The Lions are going to be coming for them. The Eagles. It's going to be tough. And, they've made it to, so let's see, they've made it to 3 straight NFC championship games. And they've made it to 4 in the last 5 years. They made it back in 2019, and they, 2019-2020 season, they played the Chiefs, lost. The COVID season, they dealt with a ton of injuries, so, throw that season out the window. But when they're healthy, you see what they could do. They are a very good team. They are the class of the NFC. As I did that Greg Olsen segment when he was talking about the 49ers being the team to beat. So, Aiyuk's an important part of what they do. And if they lose him, it's going to be tough. You're going to have guys step up. The young guys, Jawan Jennings got a new contract, so, he's going to take on a bigger role. But you can't lose Aiyuk in the short term. But that's just me. He wants that big contract, and he'll get it at some point, but it might not be with the 49ers. It might be with somebody else. And he's perfectly okay with that. And it's different. It is different from our perspective because we're not in their shoes. We could easily say, oh, well, I want to stay with my team. I want to be loyal. Well, unless you're Jalen Brunson, you're going to take the top dollar. And if it's elsewhere, then so be it. I mean, we've seen that all across sports. I mean, Jalen Brunson took a $100 million discount to stay with the Knicks, which I love, but that's a lot of money you're leaving off the table. Now, he could eventually earn that money back, but yeah, I bet you didn't think I was going to bring up basketball here, huh? Yeah, well, make sure to check out Nelson's show. See, look at that. Look at that. Great way to advertise one of our shows. But, yeah, it's easy for us to say we want to stay with our teams. But, a lot of these guys, they don't want to do that. They're like, we want to get top dollar, and we'll go wherever. And a lot of times it's a mistake, because you could be leaving a very good situation going to a team that's, not as good, is rebuilding, whatever. And then you're stuck there. But you got your new contract, so it doesn't really matter. But I don't know, that's just me. Yeah, so Aiyuk is going to get paid. It's just a matter of when. And it might be with the 49ers, might be with another team. Like I said, we got to keep playing the waiting game. But let me know what you guys think, though. Again, there's some things to be positive about. The 49ers have dealt with similar situations like this in the past. So this could be the latest where they get a deal done. So we'll keep an eye on it. But we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we will talk about Bill Belichick. We talked about him a little bit yesterday. We'll talk about his comeback plans. To be back on the sidelines, which I think we all know he wants to. But I wanted to get into that, so we'll discuss it when we come back from our next break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to talk about Bill Belichick. Some reports coming out. He still has a desire to coach, which, we know that. Trying to make a comeback in 2025. So, yeah, he intends to return as an NFL coach in 2025. He's staying engaged in football during the year, of course. He's going to be on Inside the NFL, the Pat McAfee Show, the Manningcast. We've gone over that. And I talked about Andrew Perloff and his comments about how Belichick's a hypocrite when it comes to joining the media. But, yeah, he's trying to, this is one thing that he's trying to do. He's trying to pursue the all-time wins record, which is held by Don Shula. He's got 328 wins. Belichick has 302. So he needs 26 more to break the record. He's really close. And I mean, yeah, when you're that close to breaking a record, I mean, you want an opportunity to try to do that. And wherever he ends up, I mean, it's got to be with the team that's in a position to, finish with a good record, make the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, you look at some of the Super Bowl contenders. I mean, the Chiefs. I mean, Andy Reid's not going anywhere. The 49ers, Kyle Shanahan's not going anywhere. He's got to go for some of these other teams that, are playoff teams, but not necessarily, Super Bowl contenders. I don't think he's going to a team that's going to be rebuilding. That's not going to happen. So it's going to be interesting how it all plays out. But, I mean, I think we know all along Belichick wants to come back and coach. I think it definitely for me was surprising that he didn't end up with a job. I mean, I kind of understood why. Because of his age and, how the Patriots' final couple of years went with him as the coach. I mean, it was just like a downward spiral. Last year was not good, 4-13, which, I mean, you hear the Patriots and 4-13 in the same sentence, and you're like, what year is it? Well, it's 2023. there's no more Tom Brady, no more Rob Gronkowski. This is what ended up happening. You had Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones, starting at quarterback, and now Mac Jones is a backup quarterback in Jacksonville. It's weird. It's weird because you just, and that's been a popular word today. Is just weird. That's the word I can give you. That's the word of the day. But you go your whole life. I'm 24 years old, and you watch the Patriots, and they're a team that made the playoffs every year. Up until COVID, the pandemic. But they made the playoffs every year. They're always in the AFC Championship game pretty much. I mean, there was rare times where they weren't. There was that year the Ravens beat them in the wild card round. But, and then also you had Brady's last year in New England with the Titans upsetting them in New England, in Foxborough. I'm trying to think. Well, because let's see, 2013. Well, yeah, 2012 they were in the champion. 2011. Oh, let's not forget the Jets. I'm all over the place right now. The Jets upset them in Foxborough in the 2011 season. But you had 2011 when they made it to the Super Bowl against the Giants. They were in the championship game. They were in the championship game against the Ravens. They lost that. 2013 against the Broncos. 2014, they won the Super Bowl. 2015, championship game. 2016, they won the Super Bowl. 2017, they lost the Super Bowl. 2018, they won the Super Bowl. Like, they were in the AFC Championship game 8 years in a row. That's crazy. And now look at what Mahomes is doing. He's trying to do the same thing. Now, there were years that the Patriots did not win. There's years the Chiefs didn't win. But it's just, it's impressive what they were able to do. And they had two separate dynasties. The early 2000s, which, I was too young to remember those. But that happened. Then you had that long gap where, a 10-year gap, they didn't win anything. And then, my prime years of watching football, they were back. That Malcolm Butler play jump-started the next dynasty. The second dynasty with the Patriots. Well, that was the game-winning play. I mean, I'm not saying that, he was, the reason, he's the main reason for this dynasty, the second dynasty. No, we know it's the coach and 12, number 12, Tom Brady, so, but I'm just saying that, because they were very close to losing that Super Bowl, and they should have lost that Super Bowl. They should have lost the Super Bowl against the Falcons, but they didn't. They didn't. Got to give them credit. They didn't. The Rams Super Bowl, I can't really. That was one of the most boring games I've ever watched in my life. What was the final score of that? 10-3? 13-3? Whatever it was. It was bad. I never thought I'd see a score like that in the Super Bowl. Well, we did. We did. But, yeah, I mean, Belichick deserves another shot. And I said this week. I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't get another chance. And he's going to get another opportunity. It's just, who is that going to be? And I've brought up a couple of teams in the NFC East, because I remember there was an article that came out and said, like, he would coach, any team in the NFC East. And there's a chance he could, because, look, the Giants with Brian Daboll, how is that going to all pan out after this year? The Cowboys, Mike McCarthy could be out. If the Eagles don't perform up to expectations, Nick Sirianni could be out. And, I mean, I take Belichick over Dan Quinn. So there's that division. I don't know. I don't know what other spots. I don't know what other spots could open up. The Dolphins, maybe. If Mike McDaniel doesn't get it done this year. Yeah, he's going to get an opportunity. It's just, where is that going to be? At least he's going to have an opportunity to go in and get interviewed. He's definitely going to get interviewed. My thing is this with Belichick. Is he going to adjust? Is he going to adjust? Is he going to learn, like, and I've said this, is he going to learn to maybe, like, take a step back, bring in other football people to make, other decisions, like with the draft, free agency, let them control that. Also, when it comes to, the coaching staff, see, when they brought in Joe Judge and Matt Patricia to be co-offensive coordinators, I never understood that. I never understood that. Matt Patricia, yes, was a head coach with the Lions for a little bit, but before that, he was a defensive coordinator. Joe Judge, was a head coach a little bit with the Giants, but was not good, putting it lightly. But he was a special teams guy. Why are you making those two guys offensive coordinators? That didn't make sense to me. And then you brought in Bill O'Brien last year, and that didn't really pan out. Josh McDaniels is probably the best offensive coordinator the Patriots have had in a while. Well, of that era. Because, they won. It also helped that they had Brady. I think Brady could have, Brady doesn't need an offensive coordinator. Brady is the offensive coordinator. But Mac Jones did well. He was a Pro Bowler. Whether, you want to say it or not, he was a Pro Bowler his rookie season, and Josh McDaniels was still the offensive coordinator for the Patriots. So, that could be who Belichick brings in, if he ends up getting another job. But, yeah, I think for Belichick, like, maybe you put together your coaching staff, but I think you let other football people make decisions. And what did we hear out of Atlanta? It was going to be like a power struggle. Belichick was going to want a lot of control, and he wasn't willing to give that up. And it seemed like that was part of the reason why he didn't get the job in Atlanta. And they opted to hire Raheem Morris. I think Belichick really has to take a step back and realize, I got to be the coach. Let other football people make the other decisions. Let me coach this team. Let me work with whoever I got to work with. Because, look, you look at that offense, yeah, you had Tom Brady, you had Rob Gronkowski, but, you look at the superstar receiver. Did they really have a superstar receiver? Randy Moss they had, right? So you bring in a guy like that, and he did coach Antonio Brown for a game. Listen, Julian Edelman had a solid career, but he's not a superstar receiver. He was a superstar in the playoffs, and he was a productive player, and Edelman was probably one of my favorite players, watching him because of how tough he was, and, especially, that AFC Championship game against the Chiefs where, he's getting hit constantly, but he's catching all those third downs in the clutch by Brady, but Edelman was not a superstar wide receiver. Like I said, they had, in my lifetime, they had Randy Moss, they had Antonio Brown for a game. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anybody else. Brandon Cooks was not like a superstar. But Brandon Cooks was a very good receiver. And still is productive, but, he's on the downside of, his career. But, yeah, the Patriots offense was not filled with, you had Brady, you had Gronk, like I said, but, they didn't have, like, the trio of, Hall of Famers at wide receiver. No, you had Amendola, who was productive. You had Chris Hogan. But, the years that they had, like, Randy Moss, they didn't win anything. But, that's the thing. Belichick, I think, can handle whatever a team brings in. But I think he's got to change his philosophy a little bit. And I can relate that to Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin, before they won the first Super Bowl with him, he was stuck in his own ways. Now, obviously, he still had some of that, but he did kind of change his behavior. He did change some things. He was a little bit looser, and that kind of helped the team out. And look what happened. They ended up winning a Super Bowl. So I think you gotta keep your core values, but you gotta adapt. You gotta learn to adapt, and I think that's what Belichick needs to do. Is really what I'm trying to say. If he could do that, he could. That'll definitely go a long way for him. But just don't say, if you get hired, oh man, I watched tape of this team all of last year when you really didn't. That's what Mike McCarthy did, and he ended up lying about it. But we'll see. Let me know what you guys think, though. What team would be a good fit for Belichick if he does end up getting another job after this year? What job do you think will be open that he'll take? So we're going to take our final break. When we come back, we'll talk about Josh Jacobs, some comments that he made about the Raiders, and that will end off the show for today. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we are going to talk about Josh Jacobs, just some comments he made on the Raiders. Obviously, now he's a member of the Green Bay Packers, but I just wanted to get into some of the things he had to say regarding the Raiders. So this is what he had to say. It's courtesy of an article from FoxNews.com, and he said, if it lets me read the quote, of course, the ends up getting blocking me off from reading the article, but he was talking about his time in Alabama, and being in Alabama, it's a very good school to be at. This is what he said. So, coming from Alabama, I went to a championship every year, and every year I was there. I remember coming to the league and losing my first game, and I was mad and not talking to anybody. Vet came up to me and was like, "This is the NFL. You're going to lose." And he said, "I'm like, so you guys are cool with losing? It was so different." Then he also said that went into me leaving. He talked about, on Chris Long's podcast. You are going to lose games. It's not like you're going to be like Alabama where you're going to go undefeated, a lot of times. But this is the NFL. You are going to lose games. But he also said the most frustrating thing about it all, you've got me and Tay, Devontae Adams, and Max Crosby. You've got guys who come in every day and work hard, and you don't get the results. You'll be close every year, but we're not winning. You want me to come back on a discount and lose? I don't know how I feel about that. He also said, I would say one of the main reasons was just the certainty of what I'm going to get. This is talking about the Packers. There's already a lot of structure. There's already a lot of stuff in place. Having another new coach over there, my fourth head coach while I was there, I never felt like there was any stability. So some strong comments there. Again, I wanted to comment again on the losing thing. Yeah, you're going to lose. It's NFL teams don't go undefeated. And I don't think Josh Jacobs, again, I you don't see what the conversation actually was, but yeah, you're going to lose games. But I don't think anybody's cool with losing. It's just that's something that happens. You're going to lose games. You can't always win. But the other stuff he talked about, the stability and just, the amount of head coaches they went through, from John Gruden to Rick Bisaccia to Josh McDaniels and to Antonio Pierce, yeah, it's been a coaching carousel there. And then, of course, you have what went on with quarterback, with Derek Carr, and then, he ends up leaving, they end up letting him go, and you got Jimmy Garoppolo, and Aiden O'Connell, and now Gardner Minshew's brought in. I mean, was brought in now before this year. Jacobs is now with the Packers, but you get the idea. It's just there's been a lot. The Raiders have been through a lot as a team in recent years, from the John Gruden stuff. You had the Henry Ruggs incident. There's always been distractions with the Raiders, and I give them a lot of credit though. Back in 2021, when the Henry Ruggs incident did occur, and the John Gruden stuff, because that was all around the same time, and Rick Bisaccia ended up taking over, and that team still hung together, and they ended up making the playoffs. But they took a step back in 22. I mean, I think they should have kept Bisaccia as the head coach, but they didn't. Josh McDaniels ended up being the coach, and the Raiders ended up having a down year. Derek Carr ended up sitting for the final couple games, and then Josh McDaniels brought in his own guy. They brought in Jimmy Garoppolo, and it did not pan out. Now Garoppolo is a Ram, and now you got Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell battling it out for the starting job. It's just that wasn't. They should have just kept Derek Carr, in my opinion, but they didn't do that. And you know what? I do understand from Josh Jacobs' perspective that you want to go somewhere where there's stability, and the Packers right now. Well, we'll see now how the Raiders are, because I think they did. I think they turned some sort of corner, when they said, you know what, we're going to keep Antonio Pierce as the head coach, because that's what our guys want. We're going to keep that. And you know what? They really responded to him as the head coach when he took over. And maybe they turned a corner. I know if any Raider fan is watching, they're probably rolling their eyes like, yeah, no, it's going to be more of the same. But maybe they did, because in the past they probably would have said, oh, we got to go and get a bigger name. We got to do something else. You did a great job, Antonio, but we're going in a different direction. They didn't do that. They did not do that. But yeah, the Packers, they dealt with the whole Aaron Rodgers stuff. Those last couple of years he was in Green Bay. But you know what? They are a team that has a structure. And they're a team that's always competing for the playoffs. They're basically in the playoffs every year. I mean, there was a couple of years Rodgers was, the last year Rodgers was in Green Bay, they missed it. 2018, they missed it. 2017, they missed it, but that was mainly because Rodgers fractured his collarbone. They were like 4-1 when he got hurt. I would have loved to have seen what they could have did in 2017. They got off to a really good start. They had that win against Dallas. Devontae Adams catches that, game-winning touchdown. Who's now a Raider. There's a lot of Packer receivers that go to the Raiders. But they beat Dallas, and you're like, wow, the Packers, they are going to be really good this year with Rodgers. Rodgers looks like he's going to be an MVP candidate. And the following week, Barr has to tackle him, and it just that derailed their whole season. But the Packers, they are in the playoffs a lot, and Anthony Barr. I knew it was Anthony Barr, but I just his name slipped my mind, but I wasn't sure if I thought I got the name wrong, but it was Anthony Barr. It's been a while though. I don't know if he's still playing. But anyways, the Packers, they're coming off of a season where they exceeded expectations. They made the playoffs. Jordan Love played really well down the stretch. I mean, Packers kind of needed a running back, and they got it in Josh Jacobs, who's still 26 now. And he's coming off of a down year, but with the Packers, maybe he bounces back, and he's like how he was in 2022. So I have to keep an eye on that. But like I said though, a lot of Packers receivers. You had Jordy Nelson, James Jones, and Devontae Adams. They all went from the Packers to the Raiders. It's interesting, but yeah, the Raiders. It's been a tough go for a while. I don't know. I feel like this team, like on paper, I feel like they're not bad. I like their offense. I like the playmakers they got on offense. Defensively with Max Crosby, they bring in Christian Wilkins. I mean, I think the defense played better when Antonio Pierce took over. I mean, look, they beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Who saw that coming? Now, I don't know if that's going to happen again this year, because I think the Chiefs are going to be different during the regular season. They're going to be how they usually are. Not like what last year was an aberration. But I don't think this team is bad. The problem is they play in the Chiefs division, so it's already you're kind of the odds are stacked against you. But if they could get the right quarterback in there, I don't know. I think this team could be a playoff team. Now Minshew, he did a nice job filling in last year as the backup. When Anthony Richardson went down, the Colts went 9-8. They just missed out on the playoffs. And maybe he doesn't start. Maybe it's Aiden O'Connell. I did get a comment, though, the other day. I want to see if I could try to find it. Because I did talk about the Raiders quarterback situation. And they said in the comments that Aiden O'Connell should end up starting. I'm going to see if I could find it. It was from, I think it was from last week. I don't remember which channel it was. Because you got to remember, we post both on the Sports Network, and we post our videos on the Podcast Network YouTube channel as well. Let's see if I could find it. Yeah, because it was about... Oh, okay, I found it. So this was from Navigator 001. He said the biggest difference between Aiden and Minshew is that Aiden is a 9-game rookie starter, and Minshew is entering his 6th year. Aiden has a lot of room to improve, and I believe he will. That's what he said. I'm not saying that. After watching the last 4 games of the season. Even if people think Minshew is slightly better at this point, it makes sense to develop Aiden with his potential. So I thought that was interesting. Because, yeah, I'm in that boat where I'm like, well, I think Minshew's better, so I would start Minshew. But, yeah, Minshew is a backup. That's what he is. I think he can win you games, but that's what he is. He's a backup quarterback. Aiden O'Connell, yeah. He's got time to improve. Like, the comment said, well, he's only played 9 games. But I don't know. From what I've seen, I don't know if he's a franchise guy, but I could be wrong. And there is time to grow. So maybe, that ends up being the case. Maybe he is the guy. So, sorry, holding back a sneeze there. That always happens at least once on the show. But yeah, so that's pretty much it, though. I mean, let me know what you guys think, though, about what Josh Jacobs had to say. I do think, he's speaking some truth there. But let's see how he does with the Packers. I think he's going to have a good year with the Packers. Packers are going to be a really good team. So yeah, that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows, of course. And yeah, that is all the time that we have for today. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.